August 27th, hard to believe, Comprehensive Plan Task Force meeting. I'm Al LeGros, and I'd like to quickly go around and have everybody introduce themselves for the record.
George Prince.
Matt Gilly.
Al LeGros.
Kevin Johnson.
Phil Taylor.
Matthew James.
Peter Lieberworth.
Brian Hurst.
Dave Brown.
And we have one guest from the town. And I forget your first name, I'm sorry.
Kathy.
Kathy, I'm sorry, Kathy, okay. And we have Mary Ann Naif, who's soon to join us. She's in the back, and one of our members is not available tonight, so we'll proceed. A couple of announcements to start with. Just to reiterate, the state hydrologist is going to visit Harpswell on September 11th. I think it's at 6 p.m. in the Harpswell Community School. And we have a meeting scheduled for September 10th, and I wanted to float the idea of foregoing our meeting on September 10th and encouraging people instead to go to the 11th, the meeting on the 11th that deals with water in the town, since it's directly related to what we're doing. I just throw that out as an idea because I think that's an important meeting. And if you think that's feasible, agreeable, what do you think?
I do.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay, so we will not have a meeting on September 10th as currently scheduled. And then we'll go to hopefully everybody will go to the September 11th meeting at Harpswell Community School to have a discussion with the state hydrologist.
Excuse me, Al.
Yes.
And we are planning to have that be a hybrid meeting. So there will be instructions in the anchor when the article comes out of how to register for that
If you can't make it in person.
can't make it in
Okay, good.
We would like to have you there in person.
Okay, good, thank you. Speaking of the anchor, there'll be a new article on the comprehensive plan coming out in the September issue. And I'm preparing another article for the October issue dealing with maritime resources, maritime economy, and housing. We're going to deal with housing by the October anchor. And so that's something I think that we've been working on, thinking about, and we need to kind of reach consensus on that as soon as possible. Next, approval of the August 13th minutes. Those were passed out last week. Any comments, additions, corrections to the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so our focus tonight, what we've been doing, obviously, is going through each section of the comprehensive plan. And our focus tonight is going to be on the following areas. I will give everybody a chance to talk about last month's agenda, if they have any further discussions. What I'm hoping is that we have a discussion. If anybody has any issues or concerns, that we raise those issues and concerns. If there are none or very limited issues or concerns, I will call for a vote so that we can kind of say that section's done. And that we can go forward and get to a point where we kind of reach consensus or have agreement that these sections are complete and we agree with them to the best of our ability. So, starting tonight, we have 4 areas that we're going to talk about. One is fiscal capacity, which is the capacity of the town to fund capital improvements and other areas of the town. The economy of the town, overall economy of the town. There's a separate economy section on maritime economy. And then historic and archaeological resources, and then agriculture and forestry. Those are the 4 areas that we'll focus on tonight. After we get done with those, I'll go back to some of the things that we brought up at the last month's meeting to discuss and clarify. Once again, if I don't hear any objection or people feel comfortable with these sections, I'm going to say those are good to go. And Matt has agreed to edit the final version. So what we're trying to do is funnel all of these sections to Matt, who will redraft as necessary, consolidate wherever possible, and then come out with a final draft that we can all look at and approve. Okay, so fiscal capacity. I didn't receive any direct inputs from anyone on the task force on fiscal capacity. Looking at it now, does anybody have any questions or issues? I think one of the main things that we were recommending was that the long-term planning, capital planning, be extended a bit longer than what has traditionally happened in the town, which is 3 to 5 years, I think where we are right now. If we can get it out to something like 10 years, it would more fit with sort of the long-range planning and comprehensive plan timeline that we're looking at. I know as a former member of the Budget Advisory Committee that this has been discussed before, and it's not necessarily an easy thing to do because there's a lot of speculation, but a lot of corporations and so on do have long-range plans that extend out 10, 15, and even longer than that. So that's one of the main things that we're recommending in the fiscal capacity area. We've also made the point that Harpswell is blessed right now to be in a strong fiscal position. Relatively small debt. It has great oversight by the town treasurer and the administration. And it is followed very closely. The Budget Advisory Committee meets every year to kind of review the budget, and they go through it very, very thoroughly. So in general, I think our fiscal capacity is good, but we have to remember we're looking at some potentially expensive things in the future. If the town decides to have a fire and rescue, central fire and rescue building here on Mountain Road, that's a multi-million-dollar project. We're talking about making recommendations like maybe a all-season recreational facility. That's expensive. So there are other and roads and so on and so forth. There are lots of things that we have to keep in mind. So it's good that we're in a good fiscal position in the town, but bear in mind that looking into the future, there are some big-ticket items that we're going to have to deal with as a town. So, any other comments or questions about fiscal? Okay, you won. Mary Ann.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I just kept looking at that, and while it says how good we are doing, it would seem that, and maybe it says someplace else, we should be bringing up just what you brought up, and how we need to be really thinking about it, especially if, for example, if we continue to have these storms on an annual or every 2 or 3 years, and it creates the type of problems, and how are we going to be thinking about that? And I know they talk about it a little bit with resiliency. However, I'm just thinking of just what has happened this spring. And if that continues to happen, every 2 or 3 years, it seems to me we should have something that is directed towards thinking about that.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we look at and maybe expand
Should be looking at.
or add something to that fiscal capacity?
I can never find it in this plan, maybe it's mine.
Okay, well,
The area that I should be addressing.
first of all, does everybody think that's a reasonable thing to do?
And you had comments you wanted to make too.
Okay. I've made a note of that. And Brian, what do you have?
Oh, I was going to ask, how do you determine whether to say create a bond, ask for a bond, for fund something versus raising taxes somewhat to pay for things.
Oh, well, the big ticket items, the last big bond we did was tear down the pier at Mitchell Field. And, from a financial point of view, it's cheaper to do it that way.
Yeah.
In long-term borrowing, if we do the fire barn, if we do the boat ramp in Mitchell Field, they'll be bonded. We actually have a really great credit rating with Moody's and everybody, so.
So last year, though, the tax rate went up about 20 cents.
Yeah.
And I didn't read why that was.
It was an adjustment having to do with the last 4 years of what's happened to the home prices in town. In next year is gonna be another adjustment when we redo the whole town-wide evaluation.
Yeah, right,
So,
right.
But hopefully see the mill rate drop by $3 at that point.
But, going back to what Mary Ann said, it would kind of be prudent to think about these storms and the damage they cost. And has the town created any, like rainy day funds, or kind of should it be creating funds so that, Harpswell can quickly respond to that kind of damage?
Well, but in case of January storms, we had a couple roads washed out, Little Island Road, and, we had the funds to rebuild it. It's gotta be rebuilt in a different way now. The engineers are saying it wasn't done right.
Yeah.
We had to do what we had to do at the time, kinda like we told everybody in town that had washouts. You're talking about doing a big bond for catastrophes, basically.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
About bonding out ahead for catastrophes?
No, if the tax rate went up so much, could that money, that increase, sort of go into a fund,
Well,
like a rainy day fund?
no.
And,
It goes into a couple of different funds, but you're only allowed to, because
LD1.
LD1, you're only allowed to appropriate so much more than you're bringing in.
yeah, no, I understand that, but we're quite low, according to what's in that fiscal capacity chapter. Harpswell has a 0.2% debt. The town's target is about 1%, and the state, its limit is 15.
Right.
So,
I don't know what you're asking at this point.
You're suggesting that they increase debt because we're so far below the state limit,
yeah,
increase the town's debt?
It kind of goes against what we try to do in town.
Yeah.
well, I mean, but again, we're faced with probably getting these, storms worse and worse, sea rise over time. I mean, I think that's kind of probably decades away, but, to have money to be available to meet those.
So, isn't that the purpose of the capital reserve fund that's described in the section? Are you thinking about something different?
I'm not thinking about either one, actually.
Well, that's what we rely on, is the capital reserve fund for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And frankly, it would just be the town roads that we'd be dealing with. That's the only infrastructure we have.
Kevin,
One of the
what
things-
about, like, sorry,
Sorry, George.
just what about town docks and ramps, right-of-way ramps, would that be included?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, Mary Ann's group they've identified 2 ramps in town that have Garrison Cove and Lookout.
okay,
But
thank you.
one of the things that is going to come up in a sustainability plan, and this, Al, you know, how the town chooses to fund projects is a matter of much debate at town meeting
It
between
is.
the residents. But one of the things that the sustainability plan is going to suggest, starting to plan for some of these storms, this would have to be approved by the voters at a town meeting to start this type of fund and start funding this for the time that this happens. But that is something that is going to have to be really fleshed out, in my mind, and talked over with the whole community,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
there's varying thoughts on how you should fund projects.
It is.
Is that an accurate
Yeah.
way to put it?
It is, we like to raise money, through capital funds, our fire departments.
Right.
We don't like to borrow, if we can get away with it. Like to
And-
raise revenue.
But they like to have, people, I think, like to have something substantial that they're raising the funds.
Yeah, and just, I would also add that right now, under the fiscal capacity section of our plan, one of the goals is develop fiscal policies that account for climate change. And there are a whole bunch of policies and recommendations under that. I guess what I'm saying is, I think we've done a pretty good job at addressing that. We haven't said how you're gonna fund it, which is a different story, but I think that, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm not sure that the comprehensive plan is really the way that we would articulate,
Yeah,
we should
right.
fund it
No,
by this.
right. Yeah.
Just say that we need to, recognize this as a future planning issue and that people have to be prepared to address it in the future.
I think it also ties into what you said a couple of minutes ago about having a longer time frame for planning.
Yeah, exactly,
To sort of,
yeah.
Make even the financial planning align with that.
Yeah, and it's a challenge, I know, because like I said, I was on that committee and it's been discussed for a number of years. But they've been gradually increasing the date at which they're looking ahead. And I think the next step might be to go to, say, 10 years or so. Okay, having, any other comments or questions?
I have one, in the inventory section for fiscal capacity,
Yeah,
preparing for climate change on page 279. In 2023, the town established a resiliency and sustainability reserve for $60,000. There's another request to add $50,000 to the reserve at this 2024 town meeting. Is that something that was done at the 2024
It
town
was.
meeting? It was, yeah.
okay. Okay,
If it makes it on the warrant, it passes.
Yeah, right. I just wanted to, we'll have to update that to
Yeah.
say that in fact did happen.
okay.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, with those comments in mind, does the task force feel comfortable with what we have in this particular section of the plan? Okay, so you can work your magic as is necessary on that, so fiscal capacity, good. Okay, let's look at economy. And I know that David had a couple of comments on the economy section. There's a chart, a pie chart, if you will, on page 76 of the comprehensive plan. And one of the things that David pointed out was the fact that he was really surprised that agriculture, fishing, and forestry represented only 6% of the employment in the town in those particular areas. I assume that means that we're talking about numbers of people that are involved with those types of things.
I think a big reason for that is because most of us fishermen are self-employed, we're sole proprietorship, so we don't fall under any of those categories. So we're kind of untracked per se. There, even though we are tracked.
In that situation.
But in that situation, there's no data about how many of us there are, so we're not even counted in that whatsoever. So I think the 6% that you see is somebody that probably's working on a dragger or something down in New Bedford and happens to live in Harpswell, you know, and claims that on their taxes, but it's not the lobstermen or the clam diggers or something like that that's filing self-employment taxes.
More like oyster
But it
farms.
seems-
or
Yeah,
people
oyster
that have- People that
farms.
have leases in town that are recorded.
Dave?
But if this is gonna be sort of the forefront of our presentation of the economy, to say that 6% of the economy
I agree.
that's ridiculous. So maybe we ought to create a new graphic that includes something like how many people are self-employed here.
We'd have to, how would we get that data?
Well,
You might not get a
know
dollar
that-
figure, but you might be able to get how many people are.
You can get it.
I think you'd be happy, you
Yeah.
know.
Excuse me, and
Yeah,
I
please.
thought I put a note in reply to you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think we're giving a really wrong presentation in that
Yeah,
paragraph, because we're calling ourselves a fishing community, and we're saying 6%. Maine Coast Fishermen's did a study, and basically you can get the information, and you go to the census data and pull out different classifications that their businesses fall under as owner-operator. And they did this about 3 or 4 years ago. And I took a course once on how to do it. And I'm sure, Matt, you would probably know how to capture that data that we could input in here. And
It's not just the folks that are actually pulling the product from the sea, it's
No,
everybody that's
it's
supporting them as well.
everybody that's
Yeah.
involved
Exactly.
with,
Yeah.
you know, the wharf owners and everything else. And they all have a census data number, I forget, it's got a title. And if you pull those numbers, you will be getting those industries. And then that can go into your number, which is actually truer.
right.
Much better representation of
Yeah.
where we are as a community.
Okay, so if we fix this chart, graph on page 76, and make the necessary changes in the text, would that satisfy the task force in terms of this particular area? Remember now, we're gonna talk about
As long as it's accurate.
the maritime economy is a separate issue, so there's gonna be focus on that,
Maybe it should be together, I don't know, but maybe it shouldn't be presented separately.
yeah.
I don't know.
Just for time constraints and ease of everything, how do people feel about just getting rid of that graph?
But we talk about it in there, it's a whole paragraph.
Yeah,
That you to believe
I know.
I
know.
If
I
we- if we
agree.
can improve it,
Right.
we'll be fine.
Yeah,
But if we can't improve it, I would say throw it. Because it's
right.
misrepresentation.
I agree with David.
All right,
I want to make a point that the 2005 comp plan has kind of instead of doing a pie chart, they have a big table with a lot of this information, but there's about half the amount of industries listed.
yeah.
So the amount of data we have here is significantly more in-depth than what has been done in the past. And I think with that comes, responsibility of making it as accurate and fleshed out as possible. And, yeah, I'm not sure if that's happening with this one. There's also reference to education, healthcare, and social assistance increasing, but I couldn't find where that data was being compared to say that had been increased.
Yeah.
Just that data was.
The number of people in the town that are involved with those kinds of businesses or
Yeah.
industries.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we can get the right data for this and reflect that in the text, does everybody feel comfortable with the goals that we have here and the rest of the section? Here again, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
I know I'm pushing a little bit, but I want to try to get everybody to think in terms of, we've taken this about as far as we can, let's make some corrections and do it. But then let's move on. Peter?
So, in the spirit of not making extra work for us on a short period of time we have left, it sounds to me like there's a lot of work to do to really understand who's employed in what sectors of the economy and who's, comes up in the data and who doesn't. So maybe when we say, understand economic conditions and changes through gathering data, we add a goal or a strategy or whatever that says, do some research that, gives us more specific data so that we have in the future, we have a chart that makes sense, right? And I think we could actually maybe work a little bit of text in that says, Harpswell has a workforce that is, not well tracked by government statistics, and if we want to do a good job by everybody, we need to do some work ourselves.
Under policy 2.1 and strategy 2.11 is maintain a list of all businesses in town, including sole proprietorships, and update annually, which might lead toward having more accurate information about
So,
those.
would it be better not to take this out and then just make it something that the town looks at in the future, or do you think this is worth updating?
I mean, just because of time, I think it's better to take that out and make it a goal for the future.
Yeah, if we can improve it, good. If we
Yeah.
can't, I would say let's build for the future and not misrepresent our current situation
Yeah.
with this chart.
I think there's also, another, in a way, there's another option of keeping it but explaining its faults and just leaving it.
Or, yeah, qualify it or make it conditional or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
Then it makes it wicked confusing.
it can, but, there's, on page 251, which is another breakdown of the industry sectors. It, at the bottom, has a note describing that this is probably going to be hard to understand, and the trends aren't going to match up with anything we're saying because of the pandemic. And I think that's a really important thing to put in there, so it expanded the data set and did a few things to make sure that's well described. It's a weird time, and it's been 20 years since the last comp plan. Not all of this is going to look perfect on the first go-around. So, we can either take it out, or we can just do a better job of explaining it.
What's your recommendation?
My recommendation is to see if it's explainable in the text, and then if it's not, probably get rid of it.
Is that, everybody? All right, so
Simplify.
I'm going to say based on that recommendation, we will push this forward and, rely on your judgment as to whether we can do a better way of explaining it or taking it out. Okay? Okay. Historic and archaeological resources. I got one input from David that talked about deleting under policy, under the policy 1.2, I think. Integrate acknowledgement of historical connections in all town documents, and as David pointed out, well, what about things like tax bills and things like that? So he suggested taking out all and just integrate acknowledgement of historic connections in town documents.
Yeah.
Okay, or as appropriate, something like that. Anything else? And the only thing I would add is I think the other thing we have to do is to make sure we've got all of the historic and archaeological resources. Because I remember one meeting several months ago where I think, I'm trying to remember who it was, said, well, you haven't nailed down all of the locations that are on the National Register of Historic Places and things like that. So to the extent that we can make sure that we've got everything labeled, and we make that change, is everybody satisfied with that section?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So was that archaeological
historic and archaeological.
There was a time, and I don't know if that's still in effect, where the state did not want to identify archaeological locations.
Who didn't?
The
The-
state,
The state,
because of the damage that would be done to them. So for years, we never identified them by place when we do it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's interesting because I think the motivation here is to do the opposite,
I know,
to protect them.
I don't know, but I just, we're bringing it up for that reason, but I'm not sure how, that's still, the town has that feeling anymore, I don't know for sure.
As a former archaeologist, I recommend not identifying them with much clarity. We have a large population of metal detectorists and other groups in the state that can do a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. If there are rescue archaeology surveys that need to be done for specific sites, it probably isn't within the capacity of the town to identify them and engage that. There are other groups like Midden Binders that do a very good job of making sure things stay protected. I think it's much easier for the town to just focus on protecting directly protecting the historic sites, and then putting in policies that protect archaeological sites, but not revealing too much information to the general public.
Okay, so goal 2 says right now, protect Harpswell's historic and archaeological resources. So you would recommend taking out archaeological resources?
No, I think it's fine to leave that in there as a goal and policy, but not to identify them.
Not to identify the
Yeah.
places?
Right.
Okay. Does that sound good to everybody? Anything else that we need to bring up here on this section? All right. Last, agriculture and forestry. It's interesting because one thing I would say, there's a reference in here about Harpswell Heritage Land Trust. And actually, the group that really would be more appropriate is Harpswell Invasive Plant Partnership, which includes Harpswell Historic Land Trust, Town Lands, and there's one other group, I think, that's involved. So I think instead of focusing on Harpswell Heritage Land Trust, for example, as a group that would be responsible for some of the actions in here, it should be Harpswell Invasive Plant Partnership, which would encompass Harpswell Heritage Land Trust. Is that agreeable to everybody? Dave, did you want to say something about,
Well, I ended up sort of mixed about my comments about this because it may be somewhere else in this document that HIP, or HHLT, or others that are concerned about sustaining forests and
Yeah, yeah.
sustaining the resources the community should be. This is pretty economic,
yeah,
agriculture, forestry in the economic sense.
yeah. Do you think it needs any major modification other than,
Otherwise, no. I mean, I will raise this again when we
okay.
get to a more appropriate point.
Okay, so let's, for now, as it is, we'll look at the Harpswell Heritage Land Trust and maybe looking at HIP, HIPP instead, and see if that makes sense, and then if we have to, we can do something later. So, everybody seems satisfied with this particular section. All right. Let's go back to a couple of things that we discussed last meeting. Under public facilities, one of the things that we talked about was fire and rescue. And a couple of things have happened recently. There was the meeting at Oars and Bailey Island a week and a half ago or something like that. that dealt with fire and rescue. There was a lot of discussion about central fire station or fire and rescue facility on Mountain Road, and there were divergent opinions on that. I don't know, Phil, do you want to say anything at this point about your main takeaways? I know you brought some comments forward to the group. Do you think we need to do anything to what's in the plan? Other than maybe add a few comments and I think your main recommendation was to kind of increase the increase the amount of text to kind of flesh out some of the things that we talked about under fire and rescue, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, if you remember at the last meeting, when it came up about Mountain Road, Al asked me what I thought, and I was quite upfront with it, that I was not on board with a fourth fire station in town, and you heard me talk for the first time, probably. I had something I was passionate about and had something to add that I thought was useful to the conversation. And consequently, he asked me to write something about the station here. And I put together some thoughts, and they weren't all my thoughts. These are thoughts that have been ruminating, at least at the Oars and Bailey Island Station, for quite a number of years now. So I'm not here to take credit for any of these ideas, other than to put them down on paper. So I sent it around to everybody, and I've got copies if anybody wants another copy. I haven't changed anything except moved it down to 2 pages instead of 3 pages. So I guess what I'll do, I'll ask first, does anybody have any questions or thoughts or recommendations on any of the things that I put together here? The only thing I could add is if any of this goes in, then it would have to be formatted the same way it is on the strategies as it is in the other sections there.
Yeah, I think one of the comments that I would make under Goal 2 on page 68, provide for the public safety needs of the community. Under that particular goal, strategy 2.1.5 says, consider upgrading the facilities in Cundy's Harbor. What I took away from the previous meeting here, and also listening to the Oars and Bailey Island rerun, if you will, of that meeting, was that maybe ought to float up a little bit higher on the list, because I know that even if we don't build the fourth station, investing or doing something to enhance Cundy's Harbor seems to me like would be something that would be a good thing to do. Would you?
That would make sense to a lot of people. They need a much better facility than what they have now.
Okay, so maybe we can move that up a little bit on the list here to give people the impression or feeling that this is something that's important, not just, someplace in the middle or lower part of a list. The other thing was suggesting to do a cost-benefit analysis for the potential fourth station. They're going to do that anyway. Is that?
What's that?
The cost-benefit to look at the fourth fire station?
We are.
Okay. Do we have to, should we state that in this plan, support, or?
No. That'll be coming to a vote probably in March,
Okay.
whether to approve a new station.
Okay, so why don't we can add something?
Well, I think the cost-benefit analysis should be a fourth station versus fixing up the other 2 stations. It may be more cost-effective and more efficient to do that. I know there's work to be done on that, but I think the taxpayers are owed at least a look-see from the Fire and Rescue Committee in the town to at least, think outside the box and expand the scope of options that we could be looking at. There's more ways to skin a cat, and I don't think, a central station is the one and only solution that we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Well, I do.
Yep.
And because Harpswell Neck, the average age is 57. Of the 2 young people, one of them's leaving. Oars Bailey Island, they're doing well right now. Cundy's Harbor, there's nothing you could do to fix up their facility. You'd need a new one. You know, they're in a basement. And, you know, we've been hashing this new station around for years, and, you know, I said it 40 years ago, when I joined the two departments together, that sooner or later, we're gonna need a central station in town. Orr's Island wants theirs to be the central station, which, it's a long ways from Orr's Island to Basin Point Road, or into County's Harbor. It's an extra 10 or 15 minutes from where you are here. That's an argument for a town meeting, though, so we'll let that go.
Isn't there a consultant being hired at this point to study that?
No, right now, we have an architect.
Oh,
They're looking at, and the cost, as I understand it, I talked briefly to Dave Mercier weeks ago now.
Yeah.
He's saying on the order of about $6 million or something.
I think we get it down to 4.5.
Okay, so 4.5 million plus.
Yeah.
So that's one, it goes back to what we were talking about before. That's a big ticket item for this
But-
town.
But you have to look ahead at 10 or 15 years.
Yep.
Look at the people moving into town. They are not 40, 50-year-olds. They're 70, 80-year-olds.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, all of our fire departments, you know, we good volunteers, but they're gonna be dwindling. It's running pretty good right now, but it's not gonna last. It just,
Yeah.
young people aren't moving into town. People who would be on your fire departments.
Yeah.
You know, I've had the luxury or perspective for the last 70 years to see what's going on in town with our fire departments. Anyway,
Okay.
but not really for discussion for this place, but.
If I could just introduce Kathy, I don't know, Kathy's from the Strategic Planning Committee that was in Bailey. I don't know if you had anything to add or your thoughts.
Yeah, I
would you get through
don't think I can speak loud.
Well, I know, but we want
No,
to
we-
do that
this is-
recording.
You don't even have one.
I know.
Yeah, we've looked at these 8 strategic goals, and we're very satisfied that they cover all the important and pertinent questions that are in front of us right now. And we look forward to being part of the next step, which is, you know, resolving and proposing implementation plans and monitoring plans. But we feel there are many more options that should be looked at than just the central station and what the ramifications that has for the future of emergency fire and rescue in Harpswell. So we'd be glad to present our ideas to you if you have, you know, the time and inclination to make a little presentation and you know, give you some idea of what we're thinking that could be done.
I think that'd be more of an argument when it gets around if we do vote to build on a new station. I think the fact in the comp plan, it should be mentioned that a new central fire station is being looked at and be presented at a future town meeting. I don't think this is the place to argue whether we have it or not.
No, I'm not even proposing that. I'm just saying that there are other options and that, you know, in any venue that looks forward to Harpswell's future,
I get that.
that should be pretty clear.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my suggestion. Why don't you forward comments to Phil?
Forward
You
comments?
said you had other ideas, strategies.
Well, this is a work in progress, our strategic plan.
Okay.
Just like your work in progress. So we can certainly tell you where we are now, but a lot of things are on the table and being
Okay, so
formulated.
It's not
We're-
totally formulated yet.
No, I mean, we're looking into costs and researching things like what's going on around the country as far as recruitment and retention of volunteers. We're looking at what's OSHA doing with rules and regs that are going to affect firefighting and emergency rescue services. So Yeah, we'll be glad to update you, very glad to update you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave?
Sure.
It seems to me it's appropriate for us to identify this as an issue, but not to try and take a stand on it, to say, needs to be worked on.
Okay. I guess the closest thing we have to that in the plan right now is to work with 3 volunteer organizations to ensure that adequate coverage is available at all times. It will be necessary to boost volunteer recruitment while also increasing support for staffing. I presume that means fire.
Well, like I
staff.
say, we looked at those, and we are very, very satisfied with those 8 critical strategic objectives.
Okay, all right. All right, so I guess what we've decided is we're gonna make sure that consider upgrading facilities in Conyers Harbor moves up the list a little bit, just to add some additional emphasis to that. Make note of the fact that these other strategies that we've outlined make sense to at least Oars and Bailey Island. And I think your comment about taking a look at, does it make more sense to fix up 2 stations, presumably Harpswell Neck and Cundy's, vice building a 4th station, sort of a cost-benefit type of thing.
Right, or build a station for Cundy's Harbor, maybe more centrally located in their district, and do what needs to be done at Harpswell Neck to
Okay.
make it able to accommodate, the per diem of the town firefighters.
So who's gonna man that building?
Well, that's the other piece of it, is you'd have.
Look around the room. This is what Harpswell looks like.
Well, the town firefighters, you could increase the number of town firefighters.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes,
my worry is that if we focus on this cost-benefit analysis, the issue of providing timely responses will kind of get somehow lost. And, I think that's what people want is, will you get here in time to either hopefully save my house or at least prevent the fire from spreading? And is there a significant difference between having all the fire trucks and people in a central location versus 3? So,
Now, I'm thinking about all these issues that are coming up throughout the planet. And we have town committees that really focus on these things.
yeah.
And for us to try to solve them, it would seem that, I see an implementation plan here that lists these things. But these are the type of discussions you have with that committee when they're trying to make a decision on how to proceed.
I think what we want to make sure of here is that we've given a variety of different possible strategies and so on and so forth, but the ultimate decision is going to have to be made by the town in a separate forum.
And committees spend a lot of energy.
Yeah, so what we ought to be, we ought to be concerned about is making sure if this list is a good list, as far as it goes, we might be able to add, tweak it a little bit, but in essence, it gives us enough options so that we can look forward to the future and say, well, okay, well, these are some of the things that were recommended, and whatever the town wants to do is done in a separate forum. Okay? Does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay. I think with some of the minor modifications that we've discussed, if we can put the other sections of public facilities, which included recycling center, the libraries, and was the libraries in here? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All those other things, they're pretty straightforward. I'd like to just sort of say, given those minor changes, let's say that the public facilities section of this plan is good. Okay? All right. Now, we've discussed a number of other, we've discussed things like transportation, we've discussed recreation and community services at the last meeting. We discussed natural resources, I think. Does anybody have any significant change? I know that Amy had some concerns about transportation because she felt like there was not enough emphasis on safety. And she also brought out the notion of things like bicycle paths and things like that, which,
$1 million a mile.
yeah.
I already looked into it.
Yeah.
How many
Not
fire
feasible.
stations would that be for the whole town?
Yeah.
5.
Is it in the implementation plan?
I think, I would like to, I mean, the transportation section that's written here is largely dealing with basically keeping the roads in good condition, including private roads, where the majority of the roads in Harpswell are private roads. But keeping those roads passable during, all conditions. At some point in the future, there are going to be segments of these roads that are going to have to be reconstructed, elevated a little bit, whatever the case might be. I actually think this transportation section is good. And does anybody feel strongly, maybe it's unfair to Amy because she's not here, about adding something about bicycle paths and safety concerns on the roads? Do you feel that?
Well, Harpswell's a horrible place to ride a bicycle. It always will be.
Yeah.
Route 24 is good. It's pretty good till the Orleans Island Bridge.
Yeah.
It's got bypass, but as far as 123, it's a two-rod road. To make bypass, you're taking somebody else's property, and it's a state road.
Okay, I'm thinking that we're pretty close on transportation. I don't think we need any major changes to that particular section.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything you can do about it.
Everybody agree with that? Okay. And if I don't appear in any public event next week, you know that Amy
Got you.
found.
She knows where you live, right?
She knows where I live. Okay, public facilities, transportation, those are good. Recreation and community services. I thought that section was solid. I didn't hear any or see any real significant input from the task force. The only thing I would say is that I've always felt that we have a lot to offer in terms of research in the maritime area and its ability to kind of feed and support special programs in the schools in Harpswell. People are concerned about losing students and so on and so forth. We could, if we can sort of make it have a stronger emphasis on utilizing the resource assets that we have in the town, including Bowdoin College, Schiller Coastal Studies Facility, the Oyster, what's that, Oyster, it's off of Oyster Conservancy, whatever, okay.
Quahog Bay Conservancy?
Quahog Bay, that, and then there's another one that's being built as we speak, or being at least laid out. There are at least going to be 3 research and development, R&D type assets that we have in the town here dealing with maritime and water type facilities and so on. I think adding something like that under recreation and community services, which would imply education, would be a good thing to do. And that's the only change, significant change, I think I would make, and I will get with Matt to make sure that he has the right things. Anything else? Okay, let's say that that's,
Um,
I'm sorry.
I just looked back through my emails, and found Amy's email that she had gone through and kind of highlighted a lot of the changes that we had already discussed under each one of those sections and done a pretty good job of it. And one of the more important ones under Recreation and Community Services, was adding, a strategy that said reinforce partnerships with the Brunswick landing managers to ensure their expanding recreational offers are available to Harpswell residents. So I think there is some stuff that we do need to add.
Okay,
Like that.
good.
We do support that. We've sent letters of support to them. We've given money.
Are Harpswell residents able to, like,
Yeah.
use we were discussing that, I don't
The
think you
Y?
were here at that
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
Or you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
the
pool
rec
up-
center.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep, all right.
yep, yeah, we can.
Okay, do you think we ought to add it in?
No,
Okay.
we just didn't know if, I think, you remember the discussion?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah.
weren't sure if residents were able to use that, or if we
Yeah.
had a
New pickleball
relationship with
courts
them or
and all.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also, Harpswell residents also have access to the Bowdoin College pool as well, so, I mean, I think we have some strong relationships.
In lieu of taxes,
In lieu of
they let us
taxes.
swim in their pool.
No comment.
Oh, I got plenty of comments.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think we've got probably 7 sections that we've talked about tonight that I think feel pretty comfortable with. As I say, I think next week, so the process, let me just reiterate the process going forward. We're going to continue to review these sections, make sure nobody has any serious heartburn about them. If anybody has, then we'll bring them up, we'll resolve it, and we'll indicate to Matt, this is something that we want to go forward with. He is going to be, as I said, editing the product. We want a single voice. I met with Matt and Mark, about a week or 10 days ago or something like that. And it's important to make sure that we have a single voice. There are some things that we can consolidate to make it a little bit shorter. But in essence, I think we're good in a lot of these areas. Next week, or next meeting, we're not going to meet on the 10th. 2 weeks after the 10th is our regular meeting. We'll meet then. And we're going to review at that time maritime economy, maritime resources, and housing. Mark Ironman is working on the housing section, reworking the housing section, based on the latest document that was put forward to the Select Board by the Affordable Housing and Working Group. And he'll have that ready by that particular point in time so that we can have something to really look at and dig into. And then the other 2 sections of the document, please take a look at them, make sure you don't have any issues or problems with them, and we can, again, give the okay to those particular sections of the document. Our goal is to complete this by the end of November, this whole process, so that gives us a time to come out with a final draft that we can get out to the town people, have them take a look at it. We'll probably have one large meeting before March town meeting, March 25. And let them know, here's what we've done. We heard you. Here's something. We've addressed many of your needs and comments. And here's what we're going to roll forward with. Any questions or comments? Sir?
This, on the 11th, what, is that at 6 o'clock?
6
as well?
o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Harpswell Community School.
Now, you think maybe we need 2 public meetings? I'm thinking that we're gonna present this. People are gonna bring up possibly things that we do want to include, which would mean we would have to go back. I don't know.
Okay, I guess December, one of the concerns I have is when we schedule these meetings, because obviously December is kind of a bad month to have meetings in here for a couple of reasons. Weather, potential weather issues, and then the other one is Christmas and vacation.
When do we need to have our public meetings?
We need to have, I think, at least 30 or 45 days before the,
30.
For the vote.
30 days before the town. So that means that we would have to have a meeting, public hearing, no later than
Yep.
the first part of February. Now, we can continue to communicate with the public, you know, through the anchor and other things. But to me, if we work on this through the end of November, it's gonna be hard to have two major meetings before the town meeting. I mean, we could, but there are limits.
What if we scheduled 2 dates in case one was a storm? We'd have like a backup plan.
Sure. That makes sense.
You know, maybe, just a forethought, because I know what we went through last winter. so-
Late January and early
Yeah,
February.
maybe something along that lines, and put it out there that the first meeting will be the big meeting. This will be a secondary,
If
just in case, but also we will be willing to still talk on that date if possible, so
All right.
maybe
But I think this.
rain date sort of thing.
This all has to get to the public and
Yep.
get feedback no later than 30 days before the March, it's the first or second week in March, I think, I don't know, I can't remember.
First Saturday, or
First
second Saturday.
Second Saturday in March.
Second Saturday.
Yes, sir.
Will Mark have that affordable attainable housing done before our next meeting so we
I'm
can
gonna,
review
I'm
it?
gonna beat him over the head, make sure that he does that, along with Matt. Matt was in the room when he said he was gonna do it, but I didn't nail him down to a specific date.
Double
He said he was gonna do it,
I assume we can get it in an email if he completes it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, the Affordable Housing Working Group has posted I think their final report.
They have, yeah.
So that's something, it's on the town website. I know that you don't like town websites, but, okay. It's on the town website, so that's a good reference to start with, and Mark is gonna make it fit in our plan.
We have disbanded that committee.
Okay, so they're done.
They've done.
They're done.
Now we're working on a housing committee.
Okay,
Same people.
okay.
We gave him a new name.
Yep.
Okay, anything else
Attainable housing.
tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, so next time we got 3 sections that we're gonna look at. It's gonna be the last part of September is the meeting. Our next, September 10th meeting is gonna be
The 11th.
canceled. We're gonna go to the 11th September.
Cool.
Okay? Sound good? Any other questions or comments?
I'm not gonna be, I'm gone that whole week.
Seeing none, meeting's adjourned.
At that point.